Good morning, everyone. Please be aware it's the 1st of April. A few of you have already let me know that you've had your April Fools and it's got the better of you. Lovely to be here. It's really beautiful, bright and sunny this morning in Geneva. The birds are singing and it's nice and warm. It's not a cold, sunny day. So, morning, Damien. Morning, Nat. It's just lovely to have you all on board, and I really appreciate your support. Morning, Jackie. There was a dinosaur walking Preston apparently this morning, which I thought was absolutely wonderful. Fancy meeting into a dinosaur. So yeah, I've been wondering what topic to discuss this morning, and as I've shown you before, I have about 50 cards, 50 affirmation cards about dreams, affirmations, positivity, achieving our life purpose, and many things. And what struck me as strange was when I actually pulled a card this morning, I really couldn't believe it, because out of about 50, 55 cards, I got the same one. So I'm going to read it to you. And maybe it will resonate with you. To create the life you've always dreamed of, you must take 100% responsibility for your life. You can no longer cling to excuses, blame others, or play the victim. You have to give up all of your reasons why you can't or haven't done something up to now. You have always had the power to affect change and fulfill your potential. Your life is your own. Take ownership of it today. I just thought that was really quite a powerful thing, because many times we do blame other people. Morning, Wendy. And it's so easy to blame everybody else. And of course, at the moment, everybody's being faced with themselves because we're all on lockdown or quarantine or self-isolation. So, even if we do go out for a walk, we still have to go back home with our families. We can't go and meet our friends. So a lot of us are kind of facing ourselves. And when we face ourselves, we have time for reflection. And very often we have time to think more. And it's lovely when we have time to think more, time to be. Morning, Joy. Lovely to have you on board. How do we actually take 100% responsibility for our lives? Morning, Hazel. How do we become better people? Where do we start with that, And sometimes, I know some of you have got journals, but sometimes it's worth writing down. Morning, Janet. It's worth writing down our story. Worth writing down and getting to know ourselves better. Morning, Susan. So one of the best ways to do that is to write down the major events in your life. As a homeopath, we will look at the major events in our patients' lives. Morning, Debbie. Usually the first consultation takes about 90 minutes, 2 hours. And we look at, were you born into a big family? Are you the eldest, the middle, or the youngest? I'm not making generalisations here, and I don't like judging people in any way, shape, or form. But it just gives us an idea and a clue as to where you are in life and different things. So we look at your family history. We look at your health problems. Have you got a series of health problems? Morning, Jackie. On the left or the right-hand side of the body, have you got repeated pharyngitis, laryngitis, tonsillitis? Is there a problem on the throat? Are you able to speak your truth? Or maybe if you've had a big sister or somebody around you who just kind of sabotages you every time you want to speak your mind and your truth. Morning, Wendy. So we look at relationship history. We look at what your diet's like. We look at your creative abilities. We look at your working commitments as well. And it can be very interesting when you're doing a homeopathic consultation. Really, it's such a privilege to get under the skin of the people that you're working with. I don't like to use the word patients. I don't like to use the word clients, because so many of you out there anyway, I've worked with you, and I would class you as a friend. But one of the things we were taught as homeopaths was to appreciate the people we were working with, because all of them bring something to us. So it may be I'm working with someone who is a victim of, post-traumatic stress disorder, or abuse, or someone who's recovered after a car accident, or someone who's got a serious illness. I have a patient with cystic fibrosis, and the humility that she brings to me when I'm working with her is really, really quite something. And when we tune into our humility, when we listen to someone else, I always remember when I did a counselling course many years ago, we were all given a task to pair up with somebody else, and we were deliberately given something like, maybe, that person's telling you their life story, or telling you what's on their mind, or whatever they need to kind of offload. And you're deliberately meant to maybe, keep looking at your watch, looking at the clock, and looking away from them. And then some people had the option to maybe ignore somebody and kind of sit, with the body language quite closed, or sit like this. That tells you a lot about body language. The only reason I'm sat like this, I don't know what you can see because I only see the top half of the screen on here, morning Nina, is because it stops me fiddling with my fingers. Some of you know that I had my own television series about 6 or 7 years ago now. My friend Peter was very, very kind with me, and a few other people. And they said, just be careful what you do with your hands, because most people don't realise, and how often do we start scratching an ear, or picking our nose, or, picking last night's dinner out of our teeth. So that's why I'm sat like this. I am not putting my hands over my heart centre and closing it. Morning, Annette. So, it was very interesting. Some people were told to talk over and deliberately to interrupt the other person. As I said, mine was to keep looking at the clock and pretend to be distracted quite often. But sometimes, and there was something that somebody posted on Facebook a while ago, and I thought it was beautiful. Sometimes people are just wanting someone to hear them. They don't want you to put your opinion forward. They don't want you to offer advice. And they don't want you to make it all about you. How often have we said, oh, that situation really upset me, that relationship broke down, or that job interview didn't work out, or, blah, blah, blah. It can be many things. And then all of a sudden that person says, oh, yeah, that happened to me. And then all of a sudden the conversation is all about them. And our listening skills, we just need to sharpen them all the time. In homeopathy, we're trained to look at body language. And certainly when I'm working with my patients and clients or friends, I look, if they put their hand on the throat, he really hurt me, or that job didn't work out for me, or I lost a child, or whatever. And obviously when you're aware of the chakras, you know exactly which chakras in need of some tender loving care, in need of some TLC. Often you'll find that when you're working with people, when you listen to them, or when you are paying complete attention and you're in the moment, all of this area from the heart upwards will go red, because that energy is moving, and that's where the energy's been blocked. So when they're allowed to release it in a safe space, then that energy goes red, and then that would be, for me, I know that they need maybe healing on the heart, maybe on the throat center. And of course, whatever we feel, if we're in the heart, if we're heart-centered in any way, shape or form, then it comes up from the heart through the throat, and then we can voice it. Now, it may be that sometimes, we struggle to say to somebody, look, I really do love you. It may be that somebody's hurt us, and we need to say, I actually forgive you for that. it may be that we need to say, you know what, that really upset me, or morning Nicola, or that situation's really upset me, can we talk about it? But how we respond to people, my friend Alison once said, you know, Mary, you have an answer for every given situation you're in. And I said, no, I don't. I'm never going to have an answer for every given situation I'm in. She was meaning that I can deal with people who are angry or mean or upsetting or, you know, whatever, people in a bad space. I don't. I honestly do not. Sometimes I am still aware that if something's upset me, physically I can't speak. And I know from doing homeopathy and doing the self-reflective work, which I've done for nearly 20 years now, you know, I used to give my ex-husband the silent treatment. If he upset me in any way, I couldn't communicate to him. And, you know, when we give someone the silent treatment, it's not helpful, is it, really? Let's be honest. Because they go off and think, okay, what have I done wrong? And they're probably a million miles away from the truth. So communicating our truth is a really, really big thing. And I think constantly working on our truth, because how many times are we misunderstood, miscommunication, you know, we get judged for it. One of my friends, Carol Railton, she's on my Facebook page. She studies body language and she's amazing. We sat on the train in the London Underground a few years ago and she was guiding me through a few of it. And, you know, it's very important how we stand. Are we open? You know, are we kind of threatening? So be aware of your body language. Be aware of whether or not you speak your truth. Because the more we take responsibility for our lives, then the more we actually do learn to speak our truth. And, okay, I may have been looking at myself and reflecting and kind of self-evaluating myself for 20 years. I'm still a work in progress. I was just overwhelmed 2 or 3 weeks ago with different things that had happened to me in a good way. I don't mean in a bad way. And I was talking to my friend on the phone and I just couldn't speak. And then I started crying and he said, why are you crying? Morning, Amber. He said, are you crying because you're sad? I said, no, I'm crying because I'm happy. I'm just overwhelmed that so many beautiful things have come in my life and you know, people's generosity. So think about your body language. Think about your tonality. We can obviously use assertion in our voices at times. Think about any barriers and boundaries that you may have. Think about a barrier and boundary that you're currently working through. I always remember when I was in the civil service, we had a boss who was, let's say, challenging. And I just knew that I needed to get out as soon as I could of that department of the civil service, because she was quite hard work, bless her. So, you know, I put in a transfer and she called me into the office because I hadn't told her, because I knew that she'd blocked me because of just the reputation that went before her. And, you know, she said, well, why have you not told me? And I said, because if I had told you, you would have blocked me. And I actually found it quite easy, to be honest with her, because she had quite a threatening presence. So be aware if you do sometimes come across with a threatening presence. You know, often we don't mean to, but when we become more conscious, more aware, then things can really start to change. You know, things can start to change within ourselves and we can communicate perhaps more effectively. So when she pulled me in the office, I was just honest with her. I wasn't rude. I just said this was my decision. And, you know, I did manage to speak my truth. It did take a lot of courage. I'm not going to lie to you. It was funny because when I moved departments, I didn't like it anyway. So, you know, it's funny how these things come about. But obviously I left soon after that anyway. But the fact remains, it's about speaking our truth. And we can do that with love. Morning, Deborah. Or we can do it sometimes with maybe spat or maybe playing mind games with people, you know, saying one thing and meaning another. And obviously the body language generally doesn't lie. So think about where you speak your truth. Think about those times where you maybe wanted to speak your truth and for whatever reason you didn't get an opportunity to speak your truth. Think about those times when maybe you've not given somebody else the opportunity to speak their truth. Just pay attention when you're in conversation to those times when you do talk over someone. I mean, sometimes we inevitably do it on the phone because, you know, unless you're on video link, and sometimes even if you are, you can't see the other person's lips move and you start talking, they start talking. And, you know, just be more aware about listening. Morning, Natalie. Be more about, okay, you go first, you know, I'll listen. And sometimes, and it's happened to me many, many, many times as I started on the journey of self-reflection, self-actualization, self-responsibility, you know, I'd be in maybe a workshop or a talk that somebody else was doing, and I'd have a question. And, you know, they might say, well, questions at the end, and you get so focused on the question that you want to ask, you've missed half of the workshop. You know, it's handy very often to have pen and paper so that you can write these things down, so that you can move through, call it a block, or you get stuck or something like that. But what would the world look like if we all communicated more effectively? What would the world look like if, you know, how often do us British get offended by the most stupid things, you know? Morning, Catherine. Is it a British thing? Is it a worldwide thing? I don't know. You know, having travelled around India and Bali and Nepal and different places, we're all the same. You know, different cultures, different people. Morning, Nikki. You know, so how can we communicate more effectively? Some of the ancient cultures, they don't physically communicate. They communicate through the third eye and through the heart chakra. And I know many people, morning Tracy, many people who I've met over the years who, you know, I just know, just by looking at them, you know, maybe they're spiritually evolved, maybe they've done some work, maybe they've done some hypnotherapy, psychotherapy, meditation, because what happens, and the reason I'm doing the meditation evenings is because we have an ideal time now to change. We have an ideal time to reflect and become better people than we were maybe last year, last week, last month. Every day is a different day. This is not a competition. This is not in any way, shape or form an evaluation or a judgment at all. I still have to be mindful of my communication issues. I don't always get it right. I think sometimes it's wonderful when we get it wrong. There's a beautiful YouTube clip by Denzel Washington, and you know, he was not particularly academic when he was at school, and there was I think he said, forgive me because it's a while since I watched it, but I think his mum was a hairdresser or worked in a beauty salon or something, and there was a lady who was quite psychic who came in one day because he genuinely didn't know what he was going to do with his life because he wasn't academic. And she said, you are going to touch a lot of people in this lifetime. And he hadn't got a clue what was coming because, you know, he didn't know what he wanted to do. And obviously we all know he's a wonderful actor. Morning, Roy. And, you know, he's a great guy and he is an inspiration. And in the talk that he does, I'll see if I can find it later on YouTube and I'll see if I can put it on here. And he says, if you're going to fail, fail spectacularly. You know, don't do a little bit of a fail, do a huge fail, you know. And I thought that was amazing because how many of us have failed? We failed to communicate our truth. So it gives us the momentum to say, well, next time that happens, I am going to speak my truth. But I'm going to do it with loving kindness. I'm going to do it with patience. I'm going to do it with wisdom. I'm going to do it with grace. And of course, if we set an intention back to that magic word again. If we set an intention that the conversation is going to go smoothly, then, 10 to 1, it probably is. It may not do, but at least you've set the intention. And even taking the time to set the intention can make a huge difference because you're actually mindful. So when we do meditation, when we do hypnotherapy, you start opening up those parts of the brain that have just been asleep. Because the ancients used to have incredible wisdom. The ancients used to have incredible intuition. And most people have forgotten that. Simply because we live in a crazy world, morning dawn, where we do not make time. We don't have silence. We just have noise and blur all the time. Maybe the radio, maybe the music, maybe the TV, maybe our mind going chatter, 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 chatter all the time. So meditation allows all that to just soften. It allows the mind to be quiet. And when we learn to listen, we learn to listen to other people, but we actually learn to listen to ourselves. And how many of us truly listen to ourselves? How many of us truly listen to our bodies? The reason I was ill all those years ago with chronic fatigue syndrome was because I didn't listen. I just ran at 100 miles an hour into everything that I did. I was very rarely in the moment. I was always thinking about the jobs that needed doing, or worrying about the bills, or, worrying about my job. Was I doing a good enough job? Was I a good enough mother? Why relationships had failed. I was renovating my house, thinking about, how I could do the new kitchen up, and, all these things. Until the mind slows down, you will not get your answers. But sometimes we do have to crash into the wall. In England we say, banging our head against a brick wall, or banging into the proverbial goldfish bowl. And the definition of stupid, and I have to agree with this, is that if we always do what we've always done, to expect anything different is crazy. Because if we always do what we've always done, we're always going to get the same old, same old. So it may be worth, and obviously it's up to each one of you, because we're all different and we need to honour our differences. How often do we look at our differences, morning Joanne, instead of looking at our commonality? The whole world is on its knees at the moment. The whole world has been slowed down. This is an ideal time to resist the temptation to start whinging and moaning and fearing the unknown. I mean, I know it's normal because we are in the unknown, but how much power do you give away to your fears? How much power do you give away to watching the press? Because we all know the press are more than capable of making things bigger than they are. I'm not going to get into a political debate and dramas and all the rest of it. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a little bit of common sense. Have a look at your habits and go through them one by one. Morning Atul, morning Dominic. What habits are serving you? Are you eating healthy? Do you read a book? They say that the most successful people in the world read at least 10 pages of a self-help or development book every day. Some of you watch horror films, some of you listen to heavy metal music. That's okay. But what proportion of your life and your time is that? Are you doing it just before you go to bed and then waking up with nightmares? Are you doing it just before you go to bed and you just feel that your whole body is kind of on a, going with electric shocks going through it? I don't know, because I don't watch horror films because I can't deal with them because they terrify me. So think about those times when you've really consciously thought about a conversation with someone. Maybe someone you love, maybe someone, in the employment arena. It can be something where, maybe you've been caught off guard and maybe you didn't have an opportunity to take your time with that person to speak with them. I think many of you know me, and I am a big softie. And I always remember, 2 or 3 years ago, I went in booths in the supermarket in Preston. and I was just wanting to get something out of the fridge, and there was a lady in the way, and I just said very gently, "Excuse me, can I just get into the fridge, please?" And I just said, "Excuse me, darling, can I just get into the fridge, please?" And I was a million miles away. I was, I call it grandma duty. I was on grandma duty after I got what I wanted, and I was looking forward to seeing my granddaughters. And I wasn't really in the moment as such when her reply came back to me, and she went, "I am not your darling, and don't call me your darling." And I was like, okay, I got the tonality. There was no doubt I'd offended her. And I kind of half caught the darling, and I thought, okay, I have a choice here. Do I respond? Do I say I'm sorry? Do I apologise? Do I answer her back? Do I answer her rudely? And I just looked at her, and obviously she'd already moved away, so I got the stuff out of the fridge. And I kind of, my brain was going at 100 miles an hour, and I thought, probably, whatever I say is going to be taken the wrong way. So I just decided to bring in more light into my energy field, into my presence. And I smiled sweetly, not in a condescending, cocky way. And I just walked off, and I just kind of thought about it. And as I got round the corner, I thought, wow, there was no intention for me whatsoever to offend her. I just call many people, "Hi darling, how you doing?" I just do it without thinking, do I need to not do that? I cannot be who I am not. And I don't want to be who I am not. I want to be a better version of myself all the time. Hi, Wayan. This is Wayan from Bali. I don't know if you're watching with Bapa Manku or you're watching with Father or anybody else, but hi to all the people I work with in Bali. This is just beautiful. So, yeah, thank you, Wayan. It's lovely to have you on board. So how can we communicate more effectively? I had to be very careful when I was in Bali because, we have so much slang and colloquialisms. I can never say that word. And, I had to talk slowly because Wayan did the bulk of the translating for Bapa Manku, Father, Aji, and the other Bapa Manku that we work with as well, and the high priests. So, we communicate through our body language. Often I would meet many of the high priests in the temples, and there was a knowing between us without the need for words. So be aware of how much you rely on words. Do you use your body language? Do you use your presence? Do you use the tonality in your voice? Do you use loving kindness? Do you always have to be right? Do you always have to have the last word? I always remember many years ago, I had a row. Chris and I are divorced now, but we'd had a row, and I just could not understand the point that he was making. Hi, Tony. And we had this blazing row, and we very, very, very rarely rowed. And we had a row, and I just really genuinely didn't know what to do because I thought, how can our opinions, when we have so much love, we have 4 children, how can we be so different? And I guess, probably at the time, I had a need to be right, if I'm honest. And I genuinely could not understand, nor could I take on board his point of view. And at the time, I was in my 20s. And it genuinely saddened me. And I hadn't heard the phrase, "Can we not agree to disagree?" And I just gave him the silent treatment, maybe for 2 days, something like that. Did it help? No. Why did I not sit down and say, well, can you just explain that a bit more? Because I don't understand. Why could I not be humble enough to say, let's agree to disagree? Or can you explain that a little bit more to me? Because I'm at a loss. I don't understand what you're trying to communicate to me. And how often have we maybe not done that with someone? How often do we, like I say, have the need to be right? I used to have the need to be right. Now I actually love being wrong because that's when I learn. So think about a time when you want to forgive yourself for communication or miscommunication. And communication isn't just what we say, it's our body language, it's using our presence, and it's using our abilities to hear and to be heard. You know, do we have to always be the loudest in a group of people? Some of you like to be very quiet in a group. Certainly running workshops and talks, I encourage everybody to speak the truth. Or if I'm asking a question, I will usually, not always, it depends on the size of the group and different things, but very often I'll go around the group and ask them one by one, you know, what their opinion might be. And it's funny when you kind of do the talks and the workshops, you do become aware that, you know, when the studies have been done by the psychologists of the percentage of people in the group who always want to be heard, who always want to make their presence known, and those that are quiet and more quiet. And yet the ones that are more quiet, usually actually when you get under the skin, they're a lot wiser and they actually have more to say. So be aware if, you know, maybe you take over with other people. Do you talk over other people? Could you maybe have better listening skills? Be aware of any time when you have not been heard or when you've been rude to someone, either intentionally or unintentionally. I mean, as I said, you know, the woman in the supermarket, I could have dwelt on that and kind of gone over and over and over it, or I could have been rude back to her. It wasn't going to resolve anything. Maybe I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't say the word darling to everybody anymore, you know. And there's always a lesson, there's always a learning. Every single day we are learning if we choose to. And yes, sometimes we can, you know, learn to be kind with someone and learn to be kind with ourselves. Morning, Mick. So think about your listening skills. Think about listening to your body, your mind, your soul, your spirit. Think about those times when your body's tired. And if you're tired, you know, are you sitting up watching the film for far too long? Is there an opportunity for you to rest? I know sometimes we can't. We've got families, we've got jobs, we've got a million things that we need to do, or at least that we perceive that we need to do. And now we've all got time. We've got time to reflect, time to move forward, time to perhaps be kind to ourselves, time to listen better, time to listen to aspects of ourselves maybe that we've long forgotten. Maybe many of you are looking at hobbies that you've forgotten, or many of you might be doing jobs around the house, decorating or things like that, that you've not done for a long time. So when we start listening, and listening is on so many different levels, isn't it? Mentally, spiritually, physically and emotionally. Listening is on levels of, you know, checking in with our physical body. Is this the right food for me? Is this the right time for me to eat? You know, as a homeopath, we look at different digestive systems. I've treated many patients with digestive systems, you know, where they've maybe been eating the wrong foods and they've had digestive problems or skin problems. Be aware of how much water you're drinking during the day, you know. Sometimes it's the simple things, and sometimes, and it is so true, it's just one tiny step in the right direction that can change so much. And the more that we learn to accommodate our change, morning Tim, the more that we learn to accommodate changes, and we all know that it's not easy, morning Peter, the more we can embrace another change, and then another change, and then another change. And now at this time, you know, this virus has given us a lot of good things in a lot of ways, because it's certainly, from what many of you are private messaging me and or ringing me and chatting to me about, it is bringing a change. It's bringing a sense of community. Many of you are looking out for the elderly in your community. Many of you are contacting friends that you've just not had time to do. Morning, Kath. Morning, Chloe. So think about how you can use your time more wisely. Think about how you can communicate more effectively. Think about how you can learn to forgive yourself for not having communicated your truth, perhaps, or maybe sometimes when you've been a bit sharp with someone, when you've been a bit rash, and when you've not understood their point of view. Sometimes it only comes with maturity. We don't talk about emotional maturity. We don't talk about spiritual maturity. Mostly our society is patriarchal and, based on IQ. Well, IQ has its place. It's great if we can learn to read and write, but not everybody can. And it's about being kind to people. When I was in Bali, I was asked to teach English to the children. They were only 5 or 6 years old. And it was a real honour to work with these children. And irrespective of the fact, that I could speak the language or otherwise, and it was a bit of a struggle, if I'm honest, because my Balinese at first wasn't that great. But the respect these children had for me, it was profound, and it really made a huge difference to me. So when I used to get them to speak from 1 to 10 in English, when they'd done it, and sometimes a teacher would call them up to the front of the class, I used to give them a high five, and I used to get them to say gold star. They soon learned what it meant. And they would come up and do the alphabet, and we would go through that, obviously, A, B, C, D and everything. And then we would convert words. Snake in Indonesian is ular. And I had to learn to roll my R's, and I had to learn to pronounce the vowels quite differently. But the kids were patient with me. That's one thing with children. They are not judgmental. And if you've got children, just, take time to watch your children. Be aware of what they're picking up, because, if you have fear around what's going to happen when we all come out of this, if you have fear around the unknown, your children are picking that energy up all the time. If you laugh and you accept and you move with a sense of trust that everything will be okay, because we are all going to come through this. We just do not know what's on the other side. I'm looking forward to going to, the local restaurant and seeing more people in the park, because at the moment, Geneva's like a ghost town. Even the Jet d'Or, the huge spray of water that they have, which shoots up 140 metres, it's absolutely incredible. It's full of the negative ions, the ions that bring positive energy to you. It's absolutely beautiful. But it's not been on for the last 2.5 weeks, which to me is incredibly sad. But of course they're going to get social gatherings there, and obviously we don't want that with the virus at the moment. So that again comes back to appreciation. And we don't need words to communicate. Sometimes we can look at a tree, or sometimes we can look at someone who's stood by a tree or by a garden, and we can tell that they just appreciate nature. There were some people swimming in the lake yesterday, and they were just thoroughly enjoying it, even though the water was cold. But you can observe, and you can observe that they are appreciating that. So, there was husband and wife with a baby in the pram, and they were chatting easily, and they were just sharing a lot of love. And, my French is so-so. And I had no idea what they were saying, but the love between them just shone. So we all need to spread a bit of love at the moment. And I'm not talking about the slushy mushy stuff. But I'm sure many of you, because it's April Fool's Day, have had a prank pulled on you as well. And the laughter and the giggles that brings. As I said, there's a dinosaur walking around Preston today, so you need to be really, really, really careful. Think about how you can communicate better. And when we evaluate ourselves every day, then we really can bring effective changes. When we choose to listen to ourselves more, when we choose to listen to others more, when we learn to forgive ourselves, when we learn to forgive others, when we learn to have compassion in any given situation, when we set an intention for forgiveness. So I realise that many of you have come on the FaceTime Live later, but I just want to share this with you. It's from, these are cards. I've got about 55 of them. I think I must count them and then I'll let you know. But the dream cards. And every morning I set the intention and you know, ask my spirit guides to help me to do the talks. Because every day I've had to have a different subject, obviously. And this is the card. I've been doing these now for a week, so this is kind of day 8. And this card has come out 3 times. So I will read it to you for those of you that have just joined us. To create the life you've always dreamed of, you must take 100% responsibility for your life. You can no longer cling to excuses, blame others, or play the victim. You have to give up all of your reasons why you can't or haven't done something until now. You have always had the power to affect change and fulfill your potential. Your life is your own. Take ownership of it today. So one tiny step in the right direction, just one. It's not rocket science. You know, don't look at climbing the top of the mountain, just start at the bottom. Rome wasn't built in a day. None of us learnt to drive a car in one day. You know, none of us have renovated a house in one day. We may have had the plans for it. We may be able to see the finished product. But, you know, the butterfly doesn't come out of the cocoon in one day. Everything takes time. And when we learn to have patience with ourselves, when we learn to have patience with other people, when we learn to communicate better, then life gets better generally. So I bid you all farewell. I hope that you've got something out of that. I hope and I trust that I myself have communicated effectively to you, and I apologise if I haven't to anyone in any way, shape or form. But yes, I hope you have a beautiful day. I don't know what the weather is in England. Usually friends let me know before I come on these FaceTime lives. A very good friend of mine, no names mentioned, has had some very, very good news today, and I'm absolutely over the moon for her. And I'm not sure if you're watching, Rebecca, but it's my friend Becky's birthday today. So I hope you have a really, really wonderful day. So I hope for all of you that I've inspired you in some way, shape or form. I hope you've had some inspiration to maybe just take that one step forward. And I hope in some way, shape or form I brightened up your morning. So have a wonderful day, however you choose to use the day. I hope that you use it wisely. I hope you take care of yourselves, take care of those around you that you love. And yeah, all the best. I don't know what time I'll do the meditation this evening. Probably around maybe 9:15, something like that, but I'll put a post on later. If any of you have any subjects you want me to put on the meditation for tonight, please let me know. Otherwise, as usual, I will just go with my intuition. So take care all, have a good day, and yeah, sacred blessings to